changes. So I especially wanted to thank you all for your time and your commitment to being on the Forestry Commission and advising on tree policies. Your service and your support is truly valuable and appreciated. Thank you for being here. Moving on, we have a few vacant seats on the commission right now, as you know, so I wanted to give an update on the recruitment process. And again, thanks to Commissioners Lilly and Plack for helping in that process. At this point, we're towards the tail end of that. We are now working to get approval of 2 new commissioners from City Council. We need to get that on an agenda, and we're working to hopefully get it on an agenda next month. Council's agendas are quite full, so it takes a bit of work to do that. Next, I wanted to update you on the Harborton project in Forest Park, the PGE project. Thank you all again for your extra meeting, making extra time, listening, deliberating, and providing your letter of advice to the city. The hearing on that project was held on the 29th of January. There was quite a bit of testimony, both for and against the proposal. Although Laura Lehman, who you know from that project, said that more folks spoke against in their testimony. The record for comment closed on the 5th of February. There was some additional time for the applicant PGE to respond to some additional information that was received, and that closed on the 12th of February. So now we all await the hearings officer's decision, and that is expected in early March. And of course, we will keep you posted. Next, I need to speak to budget. As you all have likely seen in the media and heard here before, the city is facing a very large budget deficit, $100 million at present, largely due to reduced revenues and increased costs. Things cost more. In the new form of government, the budget development process is also new and different. As part of that process, next week, the city administrator's budget for fiscal year 25-26, next fiscal year, so the one that would start July 1st, is planned to be released. Given that large city deficit, there are significant cuts that are expected to be in that budget, and those will likely include urban forestry. Meantime, we've been working to get information about potential impacts that might be captured in that budget, and to provide that information to our potentially affected staff and others. We're trying to be as transparent and early in our communication as possible so that folks have as much time as they can to manage that information. We plan to have time on our March agenda here to provide more information, have discussion, and for you all to advise on budget as you do each year. Other things related to city budget and the new form of government, you all recently received an email about the Vibrant Community Service Area potentially being dissolved, and Commissioner Clapp asked a question about it by email. So I want to cover that a little more here. That measure, dissolving the Vibrant Community Service Area, is being considered as a cost-saving measure. It would be, in effect, it would be consolidating city programs and reducing positions by limiting the Vibrant Communities Service Area. So in other words, we have a deputy city administrator, an office with staff in there. There are actually several staff that are at the Vibrant Communities level. And those positions, if the service area were dissolved, would move or go away. For Parks and Recreation, including urban forestry, this would mean we'd be assigned to a different city service area, for example, and forgive me if I don't get all the exact titles correctly, but community development and economy, or public safety, or public works, for example. Another item along those lines, government structure and budget. The city recently made the decision to bring the Bureau of Environmental Services and Portland Water Bureau together into one bureau. It's been a consideration that's been explored for some months now by those bureaus and their leadership, and that research has been called One Water. A recent step is the decision to merge them, and as part of that, both of those current bureau directors are soon retiring, and a new single bureau director will be identified through a nationwide search. Then last two things regarding government structure here in the city and budget. City leadership is also working on consolidating and centralizing certain functions. Those are functions that many bureaus historically have each housed. For example, each bureau typically has an information technology team, hardware, software support, also equity and inclusion staff, workforce development staff, community engagement, programming, and communications and marketing staff. So I'll use communications and marketing, the last one I mentioned, as an illustration. So what the city is looking at is, instead of there being comms and marketing teams in each bureau or in each service area even, there would now be one comms and marketing team for all city functions. And we have been told that we should expect positions to be eliminated by that consolidation and reorganization. So the last thing I wanted to say about this is to recognize that these are really immense and impactful changes, and they're changes to city services, and they're also changes to people, you know, the city staff who provide these public services every day. And I and our team in urban forestry, we're doing everything we can, as I mentioned before, to be transparent, supportive, human, timely, in sharing information that we have when it's available to us that we can share. And the city, in situations where positions are eliminated or layoffs happen, has a process that is called redeployment, where they try to identify opportunities for folks who are losing a position to move into. There are a number of tools like that that the city has as well that I just wanted to share with you. Okay. I'll do one more thing and then break for questions. Related to the comms and marketing streamlining consolidation that I just mentioned. Good morning, Noel.
Good morning.
As you may recall, part of our PSEF-funded tree protection and care initiative includes having a position, two positions actually, one to lead and one to assist with developing and implementing our first ever urban forest tree and urban forestry public education program, things that would be communicated like, you may need a permit, here's how to get a permit, looking at improving communications around permit processes, letting folks know about street tree maintenance when that comes around, etc. That position we have obtained through the process with Bureau of Human Resources. However, it is viewed to be part of that comms and marketing consolidation right now. And so we're not able to recruit for it currently. We're hopeful that because the funding source is not general fund levy, rather PSEF, that it may be looked at differently. But for the moment, it's on hold. And then the last PSEF update that I have time to give today. We have a position posted that's very exciting. It is the Private Tree Care Assistance Coordinator. You may recall another part of tree protection and care is, for the first time ever, we'll be able to have a program to provide financial support for private property tree care and maintenance. And this position will lead developing that and implementing it. And we'll put the link in the chat in a little bit. I'd ask that you share that around. I think it's a really exciting, cool job. A lot of innovation opportunities there and great connection with people and community and trees. So please share it around. I'll do a time check. Okay, great. Then here's what I'd like to do. I have more that I could share about tree protection and care, tree code compliance, trees in the curb zone, tree planting establishment contracting, but I want to make sure there's time for questions. So why don't I stop and see if there are any questions that you all have about things so far, and then I can keep going with whatever time's left.
Thank you. What is the difference between a service area and bureau?
Great question, thank you. Yeah, insider baseball when I say that, right? So when the city form of government changed, I think the best way I can put it is a layer was added, a collecting layer. These bureaus were collected into areas of somewhat similar functions and put within service areas. Service areas each have a deputy city administrator leading them, and they each report to the city administrator, Mike Jordan. So it would have been really difficult for the city administrator to have all these different bureaus reporting to them. Have like what, 35 direct reports, more. And so there was that layer added, the service areas. And if you want to look them up, you can look online for City of Portland service areas, you can see the list of them. Ours, the Vibrant Communities service area, Parks is the largest of the member organizations, member bureaus by far. We're about 80% of Vibrant Communities, but it also includes the Children's Levy, Portland Children's Levy. Arts, am I missing anything? City staff?
It's just those parks, arts, and the Children's Levy.
Yeah, those three things.
Yeah.
Cool. I really think that urban forestry should be put underneath one of the other service bureaus that does, or service areas and bureaus that is more focused on public works. So.
Yeah, thanks for the comment, and we will see what comes. When these service areas were first being considered and developed by the previous council, there was a moment where Parks was in public works along with PBOT, BES, Water, now One Water.
Yeah.
Whatever they're gonna call that. And there's some rationale for that. Just to clarify, to my knowledge, urban forestry or other parts of parks aren't being considered to be pulled out of parks. It's parks moving as a unit somewhere if Vibrant Communities is dissolved.
Commissioner McMillan.
Yeah, just really quick. I was wondering if the PSEF position.
Oh, you muted.
I don't think you're muted, but I
Or
wonder if
we're not hearing you
Yeah.
for whatever reason.
Yeah,
You don't look muted.
sorry.
This is awkward, but
oh, we can't hear Megan either. Is the sound
If you
not
want to
on?
put the question in the chat,
Yeah.
that could work.
Okay.
Or, but if it's
Oh,
There you go.
that was our fault.
Our
We
fault.
got it.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
All right. I was wondering if the PSEF position, if there was a period where it's posted internally before it's open to the public. Just wondering about the
Yeah, good question.
shifting around.
Yep, it isn't. We generally post internally when it's a position that we feel would be very difficult to fill externally. But I think I hear what you're saying about, could other city staff move into that position?
Yeah.
They're still welcome to apply for it. It literally is promoted a lot within the city. We all get an email every Monday. I do a communication with our whole team where I include those job openings too. It is, right now, it is an open recruitment externally that anyone can apply for. And it closes on March 3rd.
Any other questions, thoughts, commissioners? I had a quick one. I'm not sure what you wanted to cover. Two things, follow up on Casey's comment. So yeah, personally, I was never really in favor of a separate service line for the same reason. I think that, for parks and urban forestry, as opposed to being in public works, I always thought that the sort of the theoretical marketing or community highlighting function of having a vibrant communities sounded good, but it's probably nothing that the public really would understand. And the downside is huge with not being at the table equally with other public works. So as this evolves, it's just another community comment about this. It seemed like, as you know, I'm on Parks and Rec too. It seemed like a very sort of a political inside decision.
To
you
create
know,
vibrant community.
to create vibrant communities with not a lot of input from the public. So, anyway. And then my second question to you, though, is, so in the cuts that you're having to propose, I'm sorry, I'm sure there's documents available on this, but, you know, what is kind of your best and worst case scenario, and where would you see the worst case scenario hitting the most?
Yeah.
Can you give us just like a little sense of that?
Yeah, great questions. I wish I had great answers. We really need to see what is in Mike Jordan's budget next week. So I think next month, we should have ample time to discuss this on the agenda, or aim to have that. Once we know, we don't know really what's coming, which is different. In the past, there's been a lot of back and forth between bureau leadership and commissioners, right? We used to have commissioners and city council. In this case, though, we are waiting. We were asked some months ago to submit information. Where could we find money, kinds of thing. So Brian and I led that effort for our division, and we really looked hard at trying to maintain our core services and positions with people in them, and literally trying to find ways to spend money to make our percentage. You know, things like, could we not rent this space and do something else, because it costs us a lot of money to rent a space for office space. But we just don't know. Like, I wish I knew what the worst case scenario.
Thanks.
Is that what you can expect now from now on in terms of budgeting? That there's gonna be a black box, everything goes into, and Mike Jordan just says, boom, here you go? Or do you think there's gonna be some more clarity, or not clarity, some
Clarity,
yes, thank you.
that word.
Honestly, clarity cool.
I like it too. The name and clarity. Yeah, I just don't know the answer to that. This is uncharted waters. First time we've had this form of government. It's all new council members. They just built their first committees. So I don't know. We will see. We will all see. We will probably all see it about the same time. Is there more time, or I'm sorry, I don't have the
Oh, there
agenda.
is, actually, even if we do minutes, it's we have another 4 minutes at least.
Excellent. Let me, here are some things that are, I think, a little more fulfilling, I don't know, positive even. So going back to the Tree Protection Care Initiative, PSEF funded. I wanted to update a little bit on the street tree maintenance program, city's first ever street tree maintenance program, yay. We are currently working on recruiting some initial key positions to start building, staffing up and building the new program. Those aren't yet posted. When they are, we'll let you know. As you know, as I've said in the past, there's an internal process that takes quite a few months that we have to go through, but we are working on that process. And simultaneously, we're working with a consultant to update Street Trees as Green Infrastructure, the Davy report from a few years ago, with current pricing costs, current street tree information, inventory information. Finished that inventory last summer. And similar, and working to begin to develop a pilot program for street tree maintenance, so we can try out all the ideas before it goes citywide. So there is movement on that. I'm happy to report. Also part of tree protection and care is reducing or eliminating certain tree permit fees, which is extremely exciting. That is also in progress. In the past, we've had to work to balance charging fees to pay for enough staff and resources to do the work against trying to keep permit costs down for property owners to be less of a burden and a barrier. Now that there are these PSEF funds to cover those costs, we can really just focus on providing code implementation, tree expertise, customer service, and the best possible tree outcomes and not cost recovery. It's incredibly exciting. It's kind of unprecedented to be in this kind of situation. And as in the past, any the proposed updates that we'll have for the fee schedule will come to you all at a future meeting, probably this spring, for your advice and input. Of course, City Council are the folks who have the authority to set these permit fees. So in the end, it comes to them. I want to give an update also on code compliance. I think you've heard in the past that we've been building, thanks to Parks Levy, the first ever tree code compliance team in urban forestry. It is now fully staffed, trained, up and running, just kind of lickety split, getting that done. And its creation has dramatically improved our capacity to perform the compliance work that is a really important part of public safety and implementing city regulations. For example, the compliance team reviews compliance with tree planting requirements. And here's how they do that. Staff conduct in-person inspections to see if the required tree has been planted. But the team also created a self-certification option where permit holders can submit photos of their newly planted trees. And this innovation helps us be quicker, easier, better service for property owners, and can be a more efficient use of limited staff time while still ensuring that the tree planting requirements are addressed. And the last couple of things, the Trees in the Curb Zone pilot project was recently selected as the 2024 Innovative Transportation Solutions Award winner. Woo! That award honors an individual or company or organization that executes an example-setting innovative transportation project. It is innovative, and we very much hope it is example-setting. I especially want to recognize Linda Udelman and tree inspector Mariano Masolo for leading all the tree aspects of that project, and also recognize our partners PBOT. Gina Gastaldi is the PBOT project manager for that. And also BES has been involved as a funder as well as urban forestry. I have more, but let's check the time. I can always do it next time.
Yeah, we'll probably need to leave a couple minutes for during the minutes, but
Okay.
yeah, there's a couple minutes that you.
I'll be quick here. I have a couple updates about PSEF equitable tree canopy. In other words, the vast tree planting expansion. We this past year significantly expanded tree planting and establishment services through contractors. We created a new contractor development program with the goal of promoting and supporting contracting for tree procurement, planting, establishment pruning, and tree pruning and community outreach. That involved extensive outreach workshops that were held, focusing on reaching diverse contractors for those lucrative city contracts. And urban forestry worked with 6 COVID certified firms for planting and establishment over the past several months and will be ongoing. COVID means Certification Office for Business Inclusion and Diversity. This is a state office that aims to have more diversity in contracts, government contracts. And we literally have created some more entry-level types of contracts to help bring more companies into the field. With City and Parks Procurement, Urban Forestry's planting team prepared a request for proposals for $10 million in planting contracts. That will go live soon in 2025. And our goals in doing this kind of work and having more and entry-level contracts and creating these new processes and support is to try to remove the barriers to obtaining city contracts, to increase contractor diversity and better representation of the community, and also expanding the number and quality of tree planting and establishment contractors in the region. Last thing I'll mention, our tree planting team is also now fully staffed. That includes for equitable tree canopy, which, reminder, is adding 15,000 additional trees above and beyond what we've been planting, which is fantastic. Our team read literally thousands of applications, conducted hundreds of interviews, hired and rehired because some staff moved between positions. And now we're fully up to speed. And our increased high impact tree planting and establishment is all well underway. That is all I have for today.
very much. Right, we're gonna move on to the minutes. Any requests for any changes or modifications on those? Okay, can I get a motion to approve the minutes?
Move to approve the February, or sorry, January, January meeting minutes.
Any second?
A second.
All in favor? Okay, great. Right, gonna move on to the public draft of the Portland Urban Forest Plan, which I understand will soon be released after
It will
this
be posted
meeting, or-
today.
Today, okay.
Hopefully, as soon as I get out of.
So with, so what do you need from this group, given that, you know, it's gonna be published today? I'm assuming you're not gonna be changing much or.
No, but it is still an opportunity to sort of get a sneak peek at some of the information that there's a little bit of stuff in there you haven't seen. So I was gonna go over that. I do have a presentation to go through and then
Yes.
plenty of time for discussion. And then at the end, we can talk about what we wanna do next, since you haven't had time to review it before today. To collect your more in-depth feedback. Right. So I'll give you an overview of what's in the plan. We'll spend a little bit more time talking about the tree canopy goals and our approach to tracking progress, since that's some of that newer information you haven't been a part of yet. And then I'll tell you about our next steps, what we'll be doing, releasing the plan for public comment, and how we can collect feedback from the commission during that process. Just a little bit of a reminder before I talk about what's in the plan, in case anyone has forgotten. We've done a lot of community engagement to create the plan, both in person and online, with a whole broad range of community members and stakeholders. So we've had an in-person open house. We have another one coming up next week. We also did an online survey. We had 10 focus groups specifically for underserved communities. 4 of those were held in languages other than English. And then we've given, I think, over 30 presentations and hosted discussions to groups and all different types of groups, just to provide more ways to hear feedback and share information about the plan, what's happening, learn about what's important to Portlanders when it comes to trees, tree care, and what their priorities for the future. And then we took all of that information, worked with our advisory committees. So all of you, the Urban Forestry Commission, our Community Advisory Committee, our Technical Advisory Committee, and had a lot of back and forth between those groups and staff work sessions and work with our consultants. And that is how we created the plan, including the vision, the goals, and the recommendations in our implementation strategy. So this you've seen before, it's an outline of the sections that are in the plan. The green stars indicate all of the elements that you've already seen and provided a lot of feedback on. Then the items in bold, tree canopy goals and tracking progress. There's some new information there, so I'll be sharing that. You can take a look at the plan, hopefully later this afternoon. But generally speaking, it's structured so that the beginning of the plan talks about, why we created the plan, what's our urban forest like today. And then the remainder of the plan, sections 4 through 7, focus on the future. So what we want and what are we proposing to do to get us there, and how will we track our progress along the way. And I would say each of these sections has been heavily informed by what we've heard from all of the community feedback we've collected. So it's been a while since we talked about the vision and goals, so I just wanted to give a reminder what those look like. The vision statement is quite long, so I'm not going to go through all of it, but it has this introductory statement, and then we have these four more sort of detailed statements that are supported by very detailed descriptions of what we want to achieve. So the urban forest is healthy, biodiverse, and climate resilient. City decisions are guided by racial and social equity. The city and community work collaboratively to share responsibility and care for the urban forest. And trees are integrated into urban design and planning to support healthy people and ecosystems. So the vision is very, very detailed, but that's very useful. It provides very clear direction to elected officials, to staff, and to community about what we want to achieve. We have our goals. So the 7 goals speak to the themes we've heard during community engagement. They also are very comprehensive and cover all aspects of urban forest management. We have equitable preservation, care, and expansion, education, outreach, and partnership, and climate action and monitoring. These goals are more detailed, more specific than the goals in the last urban forest management plan. And that's in direct response to what we heard from community, that they wanted to us to be clear about what we want to do and why. We've also heard repeatedly from community and from this group about the importance of implementing a comprehensive citywide and city managed street tree maintenance program. So in response to that very high priority expressed by community, we've also made that a goal in it of itself. Okay, so for the tree canopy goals, just as a reminder, tree canopy goals reflect the percentage of tree canopy that we want to cover the city or a specific area. They help us track the distribution and expansion of the urban forest. To set the goals, we used this 3-pronged approach. So we looked at community and advisory committee feedback. We reviewed what peer cities and industry literature has to say about tree canopy goals. How should we measure them? How should we set them? How high should we aim? And then we did an analysis both spatially and temporally, looking at where is our canopy distributed, where is it growing or declining, all sorts of trends, kind of as much as we could get from that data to see where we're at today and to estimate how much more canopy we can have, what's our canopy potential in different parts of the city. And through all of that, looking at all the information we collected from those 3 steps, we've also been sort of documenting what are these key themes we should be keeping in mind as we set our tree canopy goals. And so that's what's shown in the graphic. It was very important that we considered watershed health, habitat connectivity, urban heat, feasible. We heard quite a lot that it's important to have ambitious goals, but they also need to be feasible. The public doesn't want to see us set goals we can't achieve. So with all of that, we have our 3 tree canopy goals. We talked about this, I think, last time. So we have a neighborhood minimum, we have a goal for our streets, and then we have a citywide goal, which is supported by pattern areas, which I will explain. So the first goal is that we want every neighborhood to have at least 25% tree canopy cover. Today, we have about 43 out of 94, so almost half of neighborhoods do not meet this minimum. So our goal is for every single neighborhood, all 94 neighborhoods, to achieve that goal. We've heard a lot from community about the desire for a neighborhood goal. This is also reflective or sort of builds on what we had in our recent climate action plan. So we are expecting a lot of excitement about this goal. It's something I think a lot of people can relate to, of wanting to have at least a bare minimum amount of canopy where they live or where they work. The second goal is to increase tree canopy, tree canopy cover over our streets to at least 35% in 20 years. So in terms of where we are today, we are at 24% and our goal is 35%. Is there something I can do on my end?
Yeah, y'all aren't seeing the part of that
It's
table.
coming through on Zoom.
Okay,
It's just
not
something
here.
about this projection.
Because it's not in full screen. Okay, if y'all can see that, then we're fine.
On mine.
Well, actually, no one can.
I can verbalize what's in it. So for each of these, we've shown where we are today, what our goal is, and then we have a rough estimate of how many trees we need to achieve that goal. So for this one, it's 24% is our canopy cover over our streets right of way today. There we go. 35% is the goal, and that equates to roughly 108,000 trees. But this goal, it can be achieved through street trees, trees and planting strips, also yard trees, trees in the curb zone, trees and medians. So it's a high number of trees, but there's many different ways that we can achieve this. Streets is also one of the areas where we're actually seeing an increase in our tree canopy. Looking at our aerial data and our recent street tree inventory, there's been a notable increase. So we want to build on that and keep it going into the future. Our third goal is to increase tree canopy cover citywide to 45% in 40 years. So today we're at 32, so it's a substantial increase, but we think we can do it. For this goal, we need about 660,000 trees. So it's a little over 1 tree for every Portlander alive today. So if everyone plants a tree, we can get there.
That's such a great number.
Yeah,
That's just so perfect. For everyone in the city, we just plant one
One
tree.
tree.
And keep
Nice.
the ones
Yeah.
we have.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The other,
Yeah.
piece of- yeah. And it's a key piece of
All in
this.
addition.
And
For-
plant them in the right place, right
Yes.
tree, right
Yes,
like,
yes.
yeah, for all of these tree estimates, assumes we're gonna preserve what we have and build on it. So it's a lot of work, but it's doable. And then for this goal, this is where we have to bring in those pattern areas. So pattern areas are established by our comprehensive plan set by the Bureau of Planning and Sustainability. And this, using the pattern areas to sort of build up to this citywide goal is how we can make sure that we're really putting equity front and center as we work towards the citywide goal. So it's helping us to make sure we're prioritizing the areas where there's the greatest need, lowest canopy, highest urban heat. So citywide, we have our 45%, but what that looks like in these different areas, is the western pattern area, which is the dark green, that area is currently at 66%, and we're proposing to hold that constant, which is still a lot of work because we're seeing a lot of decline in that area right now. And then central city, bring it up to 20%, inner and eastern neighborhoods, 45% and 50%. And then our rivers are increased to 20%.
Would you mind, actually, never mind, I can do it. And
Yeah, I see.
Yeah.
Can I ask what the rationale is for keeping the rivers lower?
Yeah, that's actually, it's a really substantial increase from where it is. And so we were trying to be reasonable with how high where we can get to. A lot of the properties along the river are not owned by the city, they're industrial. So we can have some control and programs to help increase canopy in those areas, but we're also limited by what happens on private property. But it is certainly very important to increase canopy there, so we are trying to do as much as we can.
That Commissioner Vandermark, was that your question. I saw your hands up.
Yeah, it was related to just understanding what the definitions of rivers was, because I'm assuming that it's non-residential areas and adjacency, or could you just define that, Belinda?
Yeah, so it's just the area, it's not restricted to a specific land use, so it includes industrial areas, there's some residential areas. There's some parks and open space, or so it's just that whole area, it's not defined by a specific zone or land use.
I think typically if you look at that lighter green area, there's probably not as much residential there as in the other areas. But Belinda's saying it's really about riparian corridor, not land use type or zoning type.
Question, Belinda, so you have different sort of time to achieve the goal for this different, whether it's like a 20 and a 50 year, is that my? So what's the rationale for that? And just want to express concern about a 50 year without having intermediate steps. Because it's
Yeah.
very hard for people to work on things with
Yeah,
productively with that long of a time frame.
yeah, so so it's 40 years, not 50,
40
just to
years,
clarify.
okay.
But we do actually have interim milestones, I didn't include them in a slide. But so
Okay.
every 5 years, we have a goal.
Great.
So that we're gradually working up to that 45%, and it's based on what we hope is a reasonable amount of growth we could expect to see based on what we've seen in the past.
Yeah, but it does require returning to the growth we saw before the previous 5 years when we saw stagnation or a little bit of drop. So it would be a reversal of a trend we've seen in the last few years.
And then I guess also the reason for having a different goal, so the citywide goal is 40 years. This one is 20 years. That's because we think we can achieve this faster. We also need to achieve this goal to reach the citywide goal.
Okay. Thanks.
Commissioner Lilly?
Yeah, this is really great numbers. Higher the better. I think the question I had was the patterns section. Just in the thought process around like bird and critter migration. Just like around our rivers, is that a thought process in this, or is it just more around just increased canopy in the neighborhoods will like solve that already?
Yeah, I think we need both. For habitat connectivity, we need more canopy in our neighborhoods and also along the rivers. So I guess it was something we considered. I did actually look at some of the bird migration maps and kind of look at them with this. So given the information we have, I guess we tried to be the most ambitious we could, but also being realistic.
Great. So I'm just like, if like the western and the eastern pattern areas here, reach their target places and they're like high capacity. Is that where like critters would like and trees would and birds would like migrate around towards and like avoid the central city, or is that the pattern they already do follow? Or are we creating any kind of like, or essentially is this addressing any barriers that we know that are there?
I see what you're saying.
Yeah.
I
don't know if that's something, I think with regards to the canopy goals themselves and looking at, setting goals for broad areas of the city, I don't think we got into that kind of like level of specifics. I think that would be a consideration that could drive what is planted in terms of species, how natural areas are managed to contribute to that, and maybe like where the tree planting is done. But I wouldn't say that drove how we were setting canopy goals, both in terms of what's the geographic areas and then what's the actual goal for each of them. But it's a consideration, I think, in terms of like the implementation, how we achieve this for sure.
And I guess if you have suggestions for other information that we could look at to include that, I'm definitely open to that.
Great.
Like from what I could find online and talking with a few people was just some of the general migratory pattern maps, but those are pretty high level. And then the Bureau of Planning and Sustainability has a habitat corridors concept. It's pretty high level, but I did look at those. So I'm definitely open to looking at other information, or if there's other folks you think we should talk to.
Or Commissioner Lilly, ways that you think wildlife corridors and connectivity of habitat should be represented in the plan.
Yeah.
That would be great content to hear about.
Yep.
Yeah, I mean, just to follow up on Commissioner Lilly's comment, so, you know, for example, Forest Park, and maybe Commissioner Vandermark knows more about this, but I've, you know, certainly heard Forest Park representatives talk about the importance of full wildlife corridor, very unique for an inner city. So you would tend to not prioritize adjacent areas for greening according to everything we have here. And maybe they should be occasionally prioritized to sort of match that overall greening, climate, et cetera goal.
Yeah.
I mean, it's sort of a detail, but could be really important, actually.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. And one of the things we heard a lot from the BES and park staff that manage natural areas is considering that natural areas provide more functions than just tree canopy. That creating habitat does not always require trees. There's like oak savannas that we have to consider. And so to not just pump up the numbers in terms of canopy cover, because that's the focus that we have, it's that we need to be considering all the different uses of those natural areas too.
Looks like Commissioner Vandermark does have a comment.
And I would just follow up that, you know, what some of the research shows is that you have high value areas such as a forest park, a Powell Butte, and that what's really important in corridors is to help create connectivity, right? To move people, not people, sorry, creatures, but they're people, you know, whatever. But like between those high values, right? Because you're actually trying to make it safer for them to move in between, right? So it's why all of these connectivity and corridors, and you don't want to create sinks. So you do need to create connectivity and how you do a lot of this.
Yeah, I think maybe, I guess then more so thinking about this streets canopy goal and how we'll implement that. I could see that being a way where we could get more into the details of that. Comments, questions, concerns about the canopy goals?
I had one little question about the eastern and inner pattern areas and the difference of 45 and 50%. Was that to reflect the density differences of housing and buildings in those two areas?
Yeah, in a way, because it reflects sort of what we think is the potential for more. So density and housing certainly plays into that. I think also just recognizing that a lot of our high heat areas are in eastern Portland. That area has been historically neglected, so to change that, I think that's really the desire. Also, community engagement. There was a lot of feedback in our open house and survey about increasing canopy in East Portland.
Opportunity to give some attention to the part of the city that hasn't gotten a lot from the city past.
Exactly. Okay, so the other piece that is a little bit new for all of you is our reporting protocol. So how we're proposing to track progress and accountability once the plan is adopted and we've started implementing it. So we are proposing a sort of two-pronged approach. This is in response to sort of recognizing wanting to not bite off more than we can chew, to be conscious of staff capacity, our existing data that we have, but current budget climate. So our two-tiered approach is every single year, we will track a set of 10 performance measures. The performance measures are aligned to the goals. So in the plan, you can kind of see a little crosswalk of performance measures and goals that they align with. And then every 3 years, we will provide a more comprehensive report. So that'll be a report on the status of every action in our plan, as well as a sort of bigger picture summary of challenges and opportunities we've been experiencing as we're implementing the plan, as a way to reflect on what we're doing and inform future updates to the plan. So I'm gonna go over this 10 performance measures. We started with a much bigger list, went through a lot of reviews to try to get it down to what we felt like, what's really the most meaningful, and what's the most manageable for us to report on. So we have percentage of land covered by tree canopy, citywide by right of way and by pattern area. And the second one, percentage of neighborhoods with at least 25% canopy cover. These first two speak directly to our tree canopy goals, so we can be tracking progress on those. Also, number of trees planted through the city's planting programs by property type. So this is continuing to report on things we do already report on now. Our tree planting in neighborhoods, parks, natural areas, streets, all of our different planting programs. Also looking at number and percentage of trees planted by urban forestry in neighborhoods with less than 25% tree canopy cover. So this is in addition to tracking the overall canopy expansion, what are we doing as a city to move the needle on that tree canopy goal and to prioritize planting canopy in low canopy areas. Next, number of trees permitted for removal and planting on public and private property. So looking what we're seeing from our permitting program. Number of street trees and number of trees in developed parks receiving care and maintenance citywide and in our priority service areas. The number of street trees component of that will begin tracking once we have our street tree maintenance program up and running. Number of volunteer hours spent improving Portland Parks and Recreation's natural areas. Our summary of efforts by urban forestry to build and strengthen relationships with culturally specific communities, community organizations, or underrepresented communities. We've heard a lot from our community advisory committee and public comments about folks wanting to know, are we building relationships with these groups? If so, what are we doing? So that's where this one comes from, to be more transparent about that process. And the last two, number of hours of tree planting, tree education, or urban forest related community engagement, led or sponsored by urban forestry. So what are we doing more towards engaging with community, providing education, that kind of work. And then finally, tree survival rate for trees planted and established by urban forestry. So what kinds of outcomes are we seeing with the trees we're planting, not just how many are we planting. Those are the performance measures. Are there any questions or comments about our approach or the measures specifically? Tree canopy goals, tree planting, trees permitted for removal or planting, trees receiving care and maintenance, volunteer hours in our natural areas, efforts building relationship, community engagement, education, survival rate.
I guess my thinking was this, I think it's covered by the removal permits, but just tracking, like, I feel like this is gonna be so dynamic with climate change, like which trees are doing well, which trees are not doing well, being able to adapt planting lists and plans as we go, and so I guess maybe that removal permitting is one measure that would help you keep tabs on trees that are
What species?
not doing
percent?
well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a really good point. And one of the action items in the plan is to create, to update our tree lists, because we have it for street trees. There are other lists that the bureaus manage to guide planting development. But just probably better information on what species should folks be planting, both through our programs, but through permanent plantings to kind of be a little bit more comprehensive in that way. Yeah.
I think we're gonna need to be nimble.
Yeah.
To respond to the changes.
Yeah, exactly. And the trees needed to reach our canopy goals, it's unlikely it's city's tree planting programs will cover all of that. There's gonna need to be planting permits, planting by other groups in the city, so
Private
we're gonna
property.
need that too.
So it's gonna be all the things.
Yeah.
Got hands on deck.
Yeah, I have a question about the permitting. The metric that urban forestry has seemed to use a long time for a lot of things is like how many permits we got. When I was inspector, it was a point of pride about how many permits we went through. They were usually removal permits, which every time it came out, I was like, that doesn't seem like a great thing. We've removed thousands of trees.
Yeah.
It's not a badge I'd like to have. But I know that tree removal is a natural part of everything that we do. So I'm curious if keeping track of that metric, if you have a reason that you already know we're gonna keep track of this metric for this purpose, other than just saying, let's pat ourselves on the back, we added this new thing that we can keep track of how many trees were removed on private property.
Yeah, I think one reason is our aerial analysis. So the first 3 measures, we can't track those every single year because we don't have that data updated every year. So the planting, the permits, that is something we can track every year. So that can give us a better sense. We can also learn what are some of the reasons, sort of the different types of removal permits we do. So looking at that, just kind of a more nuanced understanding of what's going on. And other things you wanna
Yeah,
add?
I did. That's a great comment, Commissioner Clapp. I wanted to add the public safety element to that. You know, according to code, removals are really meant to be dead, dying, dangerous, as you know. There are other things, but those are the primary. And so this would also help us be able to speak to what are we doing about public safety, which of course is our number one priority. And also, we just said, right, that it's not all city activity that's gonna do what this plan puts forward, but it is a chunk of it. And so it will be, I think it's helpful for us to see like how many removals to how many planting. At least from what we manage, how is that looking? And if it's way more removals than planting, then we have an opportunity to start looking at why is that? Is there something we should be doing differently that would invert that?
You do have a follow-up to that. You can go if you need.
Oh, good.
Okay. Are you gonna be keeping track through the permitting system exactly which species are removed on private property and exactly which species are planted in that permit? So Douglas fir for a dogwood, so to speak. But also, are you gonna be keeping track of that in development, both on site and in streets? To a species, not just tree numbers or sizes.
We're not planning to report the species level.
Right.
Don't yet have that data for.
Yeah, it wouldn't be reported in this. I believe most of that data is collected and is in the permit system. Casey, our manager, is not here to talk more specifically about that. Do you know more on
I
what's in
do,
there?
and
Okay.
and Commissioner Clapp is intimately past familiar with the city's permitting system, Amanda 7, which we are still using. And yes, the species removed, species planted, those are all documented. However, the Amanda 7 system, which is owned and operated by Portland Permitting and Development, is really built around property development processes. So our documentation isn't queryable. a tree inspector puts in a notes field, this is coming out, this is going in. So it'd be a huge manual undertaking.
Is this like an AI solution?
I don't know if it's AI, but the old fashioned way is some intern or somebody gets in there and goes, okay, this is what I found. That is a possibility. We have another update, also levy funded. We, for a year now, have been piloting for the first time in the city's history, a tree asset management and urban forestry management software called Tree Plotter. It's put out there by Planet Geo. It's used in a lot of other cities already. It's going really well. It is tree-based. Our hope is that the two systems will be able to communicate directly. We don't know if that's true yet. So great question. We would love to do that. There are some challenges.
That's it just makes me a little
Yeah.
heated, like,
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah.
that's important data.
The analogy I've made for other folks who like the not software minded folks is, don't you really want Multnomah County to be tracking what happens on every bridge, what material is made, when it's been inspected by the bridge, not just all the bridges or the property types? Same with tree assets. It's really no different than other infrastructure. We want to have the details. So we aspire to that.
Just one quick comment. So I really like the measures that you guys came up with. And I'm sorry, this comment is a little nerdy and it just comes from a data background, in quality improvement. And it's very helpful to have one or two primary outcomes. I mean, that's what it's kind of called in the scientific literature. And then the rest are more your process or secondary outcome measures. And it's also helpful to sort of create a diagram of inputs and outputs of that, so that, well, first of all, let me come and say, so the one or two primary outcomes really should be the ones most connected through science to health, right? And then, if you create a diagram sort of with what you think the process measures are that go into that, it would be very nice to track over time if that hypothesis is correct. I think you were sort of saying something like that with the loss versus the planting and so on. Because it's useful to therefore see if, you need to modify something around the processes that you're using and that type of thing. Also for something with such a long timeline, it, through different administrations and politics and this kind of thing, it helps you keep the eye on the prize. That's sort of what we would consider sort of that hardest outcome connected to health. So it's just more of an organization and kind of system way of looking at it. I'd be happy to talk to you offline anytime about it.
Yeah, is it, I guess, sort of making the connection between here we have the goals and then the data inputs, activities, recommendations, how that's feeding into those goals and then the outcomes as increases in performance measures? Is that sort of
It's
what
just
you're
you have a lot of them, even with 10, right? And I could see immediately that there's a couple that are more connected to public health than others, right? So to explicitly say that and anyway, divide it up. I don't want to take a lot of time in the group, but
Thank you. That's great
Yeah.
comment, input. And I wanted to add to that have healthy parks, healthy Portland. That is the vision plan for the Bureau, including a lot of tree content that we worked hard to get in there. And so that also supports that idea of the connection with public health.
I have a question about when is baseline for your goals? Like and you mentioned that you can't do aerial like analysis every year, but when would you be doing that? And are you collecting like baseline conditions on photo points on the ground ever in any like locations and also aerially?
Yeah, so baseline would be when the plan is adopted, which is hopefully in a few months. When we start, and then the aerial Yeah, so that's collected about every 5 years. We do also do a photo analysis. I don't do it, so I can't speak to the details of it. That would be Jeff Ramsey on our science and policy team. But yeah, he has a regular photo analysis that he does to help us monitor canopy. So we have that in addition to our larger aerial, which is collected by Metro using building on their LiDAR data set.
Right, okay.
Noel, could you introduce yourself just briefly?
Yeah, I'm Noel Clemens. I am brand new on the Free Street Tree planting team. I'm a project manager and I'm gonna be working with the sole source contract that's coming up. If anybody's heard of that. Starting, well, the contract will be effective for fiscal year 26.
So Noel is urban forestry staff. When we are onboarding new staff, part of their extensive onboarding and training is attending a forestry commission.
And I'm late today, sorry guys, parking was hard.
I was still late and I parked right next to the front.
Yeah. Not a guarantee, but.
Yeah.
There was the getting, I guess, stuck on.
But Commissioner Feldstein, to your comment, if you have a specific example from another project that you like are visualizing for this, I'd love to see it.
Yeah, I can see that really guiding the way that when we are reporting on this, how we sort of
Frame it.
Present that.
structure that. Because I think that is the way that we were thinking through this. It's like our primary sort of outcome-based ones are canopy is growing.
Yeah,
Like those are the
exactly.
main ones. And then if we're hitting all these other ones, if we're planting enough trees, if we're planting far more than we're removing, we're caring for them, those should be driving those primary outcomes. But I think the way that we report, structuring it that way,
Right.
we provide that clarity rather than just this kind of long
Right,
list.
exactly.
Yeah, we started with like 35, and so we were down to 10's progress, but it's still a lot for folks to kind of
And it will
understand.
be real work and budget and people's time in doing these, so if you
Yeah.
really know what your
Exactly.
primary outcome is, that's where you're investing in your data systems more and
Yeah.
all that kind of thing,
Yeah,
so,
exactly.
yeah.
Much more efficient.
Like that.
yeah.
That's great.
I have another thing. Could you go to the next 4, just real fast?
Yeah, volunteer hours,
Okay,
building relationships, education and outreach.
nice. Could you go back to the first 3 real fast? Okay, cool. It looks like only one of those is really a qualitative assessment. And I know that everything has to be numbers based. I think that is malarkey. I think that there's a lot of great things that we can do with numbers, and we just got back from a conference in Wisconsin not yesterday. One of the things they noted when they're talking about trees and equity and how to affect essentially dearth of canopy in one spot, all the same things that we talked about in terms of racism and trees. In this, and it was by Dr. Christine Carmichael. You might have read her book. It's called Racist Roots. And she noted specifically that Portland was the worst in terms of numbers, but then also noted that numbers of trees planted, which is a very common metric, is not a complete metric. And I think this also gets to Commissioner Lilly's question about habitat, where it's not the number, it's the quality, which I think also Commissioner Vandermark noted. So having a metric that we can add in, or even if you can put it somewhere within that, to basically say, great, here's all of the numbers. Now here's what it's actually like, you know, if we just plant 10 million Douglas fir, that's great, but it also makes a very limited kind of quality of habitat. So I want to know if that's a possibility that could be added in here, or at least somehow addressed, where we can look at it, then have a summary where you or whoever is doing this in the future would be able to say, okay, great. And here's actually how that affects everything, a more qualitative assessment of what we have.
Sort of overall qualitative, like you're not thinking of one metric, but sort of what does all of this actually mean?
Yeah, or please.
In urban forest management, there are some best management practices that could fit here. For example, what is your species distribution? And in Portland, there's the 10-20-30 rule, want diversity across genera, species, that sort of thing. And actually ours is even more specific than that now. We do a 5, 10, 15 because we want that diversity. So those are things we might be able to include specifically for qualitative. Are we achieving a diverse forest or are we just planting Douglas firs? for
Yeah.
example? How many are large form? And we track all these and
Things
report all these
already.
already. That makes it even easier. How many are climate resilient species? How many are
Natives.
evergreen? How many are native? Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's exactly it. All those individual numbers or things, you could develop this very quickly and easily, someone could. With a spreadsheet, every species has, 10 or 15 different attributes, and you could have each one have a certain number, so you could query that really easily from a big spreadsheet. AI would kill at that, even though I don't support AI almost in every
There's
possible
certain
way.
things
Yeah,
that can be
we
done.
report
do it
all
all,
of those
though.
things
I wanna
already
give,
with our
Commissioner
tree and
McMillan a
park
chance who's
reports.
been.
And your tree giveaway.
Commissioner McMillan's been waiting patiently, so
Mhm.
let's let her go and then the people in this room.
This was briefly touched on, and it was just the idea of the large form trees, that if that was part of the tracking, it would almost be a quantitative number, or that could also
And it's
indicate
quality.
qualitative, as just a metric that kind of could bridge both, especially as they mature and over time, retention of large form trees, as well as those that are maturing to qualify as that. Just a thought with the qualitative discussion.
Yeah, thank you.
Well, just to piggyback on that, because you're right about the numbers game, because I think, in our world, we love, in our culture, we love to have big numbers, but that might inadvertently encourage smaller form trees that can be planted closer together, because then you get more trees in the same amount of space, right? So, yeah, just like echoing all of those thoughts that we want to try to capture, not just a number, but also, yeah.
Brian, you go ahead.
I just want to come back to Commissioner Clapp's comment. I think the slide right before this one talks about these are our sort of annual performance measures. That every 3 years we do plan on having a more comprehensive update. I think that's where a lot of the
Yeah.
narrative and nuance and specifics can really get into that. We don't know exactly what that report's gonna look like. Like that's gonna be a work in progress. But I think that's gonna be part of that opportunity, because we wanna have these sort of like high level, how are we doing year to year? But then, yeah, on a 3-year basis, what if we planted, how are we doing in terms of species diversification, things like that. So that's a great opportunity for that kind of like nuance as well.
Yeah, just one other comment on the quality issue. So before you have true data, looking at that could be another sort of intern project of a random sampling of areas, looking at diversity or that kind of thing.
Or like even asking
Yeah, I mean,
Portlanders, like, what do you think about what's happening, and like with the tree planting and over time and getting feedback from them?
We do also have a partnership with the United States Forest Service called Urban Forest Inventory and Assessment. My City's Trees, it's all online, you can explore it. And it's a plot sampling based method that tells us what is our forest like. And it does include things like that, species diversity, stocks, tree size. For example, we know that the majority of trees in the city by far are less than 12 inches. And that our fewer, larger trees provide outsized services compared to smaller trees. So that is a tool we could use as long as the Forest Service continues to
Exist.
Yeah. Great thoughts.
Yeah,
Yeah,
thank you.
thank you. Feedback. Okay, so for next steps, we have our open house next week. Hopefully you've all heard about this already. It's at the Jubilee Delta Center in North Portland on Wednesday from 5:30 to 7. It's drop-in style. So feel free to come by or spread the word about it, folks you know. We also have our public comment period for the draft plan, which should be launching today. It'll be open for 50 days. So you'll have 50 days to go read the plan and submit comments. But also appreciate your help spreading the word about that. We really want to know what people think about our plan. Do the vision and goals and tree canopy goals, do they align with what people want? And so next steps for us, just curious to know what you would like to do in terms of how you submit your comments. If you want to do it just individually via an email, you can use our public comment form. That is anonymous, so if you want us to know it's from a commissioner, we won't know it unless you email it. Otherwise, we can come back during the March Urban Forestry Commission meeting or have a separate meeting to hear your feedback after you've had some time to dig into the plan. Yeah, what is the preferred approach?
Any thoughts, commissioners?
If I can just add one thing to that, the Urban Forestry Commission will need to formally approve submitting this plan to city council. So kind of like Title 11 amendments, the UFC is a approving body along the process. So just consider that to make sure that you feel like you've given enough space to voice all of your feedback, allow us to take that and make any kind of changes we need to so that you feel comfortable approving this plan in its entirety before it goes to city council.
Well, I think it would be great if everybody went home, read through the report, and we talked about it all together in March. With the explicit, it shouldn't say requirement, expectation that each commissioner reads through it themselves, so that way we can have a full discussion. I know that we only spend 2 hours a week, but we do other things outside of this related to the commission. But I think that'd be a nice way for us to come back and fully embrace what we have and be able to give you feedback as a commission, so that we also are very familiar with it when it comes back to us and we can say, yes or no, we approve this, or we think it should go to city council. So personally, that's my thought.
Any other thoughts? How does the March meeting look, and would you be able to dedicate time
Yeah, we
to
can.
this,
yeah.
including, and that wouldn't be approval, or would be? You're trying to get?
No, just the
Okay.
comments.
we just-
Yeah.
Cause that could be,
Come back for approval.
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, it could almost be email Brian perhaps maybe a week or half a week beforehand. And then just compile all those, and they could say from Commissioner Clapp, you said all these things, you wanna comment on them, and then everyone can, say if they agree, disagree, something simple as that. It's like working on a project together.
Yeah, you're definitely welcome to email me comments for sure. That's great.
Great. Sounds like no objections to that approach.
Yeah, sounds good.
Any other thoughts on the content or next steps? Commissioner Lilly?
Yeah, thank you so much. I agree with the steps moving forward and everything. I'm just like, I don't know if I'm like relatively new to the world and I'm not like an arborist. What might be helpful is like if there was maybe even just a few folks who wanted to get together and like look at the stuff together and kind of ask questions and bounce ideas off of each other. Like, what do we really think about this? Is this good? And is this a good question? I don't know if like other commissioners are in that same boat, or yeah, I should just like get my bunch of tree nerds friends together and hang out. I don't know what I'm asking, but I just want to throw an idea out there.
Would you be willing to spearhead a small group?
I'd be into it.
Yeah.
I'd go.
There was some good wine involved.
Yeah, I think that would be great, honestly, yeah. That'd be a lot of fun.
Maybe would you be willing to spearhead and kind of send an invite to the commissioners and staff?
I mean,
even
and
Yeah.
if there's a quorum, it has to be a public meeting, so we have to keep that in mind.
Oh, yes.
I was gonna say, I think it's a great idea, you can
Okay.
totally do that, just let me know the location and time, I would need to post it as a meeting of the Urban Forestry Commission.
Okay,
If it's more than a quorum, so
Okay.
more than 6. But I doubt anyone will show up,
Yeah.
but we just wanted to be able to post
Yeah.
that, so.
and we may not have 1 to 6.
Yeah,
Yeah,
Brian, you
exactly.
said
Interested,
more than 6, so
Yeah.
6 is not a quorum.
6 is a quorum,
Okay,
so beyond that,
6 or greater.
yeah, exactly. But I think it's a great idea, and if you want staff to be there, I could attend and help support answer questions, or if you wanna be able to have discussion amongst yourself, that's also great, so,
Thank you, Commissioner Lilly.
yeah, it's a great idea.
Idea.
Yeah, just look for an email from me and we'll plan something in the next few weeks. Thank you.
And if your trainer and friends wanna come, they should
Yeah, true.
totally come.
Yeah.
We would want to have them there.
Good. Okay, well, I think that's all we have for today, so we get an early reprieve
Yeah,
here.
agenda.
Yeah, and thank you so much for that really excellent
Yeah.
report and work on this.
Yeah,
It's really
Belinda, you've done an
exciting.
amazing job
Yeah,
getting all of
really
the
has.
feedback together.
Yeah,
mhm.
Thank you for all your work on this. My
Yeah.
pleasure.
Steering this project to release on the day we plan to release is
Incredible.
pretty amazing, honestly. Yeah.
Do we have time to do other things?
well, one thing that occurs to me is you brought up the delay in submission of a levy. Or that
Oh.
we weren't, so I don't
In
know
that
if you
email.
wanna talk about that now, or?
Yeah, so that was actually, thank you for reminding me of that. So that was in the email I sent out, was just an update that we had held a special meeting to discuss the parks levy referral to the ballot. City council at the time was considering referring it to the May ballot, so this would have been renewing it for another 5 years and also making a decision whether to keep the tax rate steady or increase it to address anticipated budget shortfalls. City council has indicated they will not be referring it to the May, but would instead refer it on the November ballot. That does mean that city council will need to vote by mid-June to make that referral. And so the commission did vote to submit a statement, supporting placing it on the ballot and increasing the rate. I believe I was gonna draft that when it got bounced to November, kind of put that on hold, but we have heard it would be helpful for city council to hear from the Urban Forestry Commission sooner rather than later. So I will draft that statement in the next few days and send it around for the commission's comments before it gets submitted, so just an update on the process of that.
Questions or thoughts about that? I have a question. So what's the rationale? Did they give a rationale for waiting? Because the concern is
Yeah.
waiting to the last possible moment,
Yeah.
puts the whole thing more at risk.
I don't have more information on council's decision not to consider it for the May ballot. I don't think I have.
None of us have much more on that. The way that Parks found out, vibrant communities, that it wouldn't be on the ballot was in the media. And there's been no other information from city council. The plan, though, is now to aim for the November ballot. That, of course, is a council decision. To my knowledge, there is not. Well, I do know there are conversations with the mayor's office happening around that. Now, I don't think a discussion with council has been scheduled.
Yeah. I mean, simply because if the process goes awry for the November submission, you don't have a backup date. And it would be a
Right.
huge decrease in services for Portlanders.
That's
So I don't know if it's modifiable or if that's something we want to communicate about or not. Just,
yeah. And I don't think we have any indication whether the November ballot would include continuing the current rate or increasing it
Right.
and
Maintain.
increasing it with maintaining the current service levels.
Right.
Keeping it the current rate would lead to 25% reduction in service levels, so we're not, I don't think we have much more indication on that either way.
Commissioner Feldstein, I can certainly ask,
Mhm.
but should folks who want to voice do?
Yeah.
Of course, any Portlander can reach out to their, to city council members whenever they want, on whatever they want. But I'll follow up with Director Long and our Deputy Director Todd Lofgren about, is there something that the Parks Board will be receiving or the commission will be receiving? Are there
Yeah.
requests or ideas to give them?
I mean, the other thing is that, I don't know if they submitted more detail to city council. I mean, I assume urban forestry is part of that. Submission of impact and reduction in services and things like that. But the amount of, there was zero detail presented to rationalize, okay, well, what expenses are going up? You know, what's, so it ended up being something that just seemed like would be hard to support with the public unless
Right.
this really got convincing.
I am thinking, we had said earlier that we would aim for a budget agenda item next month.
Yeah.
Maybe that can include an update on levy and we can have the right people here in the room for that, Sarah and or Todd.
Yeah.
Sorry, we are involved, urban forestry, but we are more like the implementers of the levy and reporting the good things we're doing on it. We participate in creating the annual report, which council recently accepted the 3rd year levy report, which is great. It's got really good progress in it. We are more on the receiving end when it comes to strategies and process.
Any other thoughts or comments, guys, or you, Commissioner Klopp, you said other areas of discussion or?
Yeah, I guess everyone is technically ready to stay for another half hour. And normally we have not a whole lot of time to talk about things or different agenda items. And I know we technically don't have anything, but I have plenty of things I'd be willing to talk about. Just in case.
Do you want to talk about the city's nuisance species lists?
Yes, I would love to. Yeah, can we do that?
Well, chairs, is that what you all would like to? I know Commissioner Cott's been interested in that, and we have not had space to do it.
Yeah, well, maybe, how do folks, Commissioner Vandermark?
I was just gonna personally say, I wanna give you all space to use 30 minutes. If I can buy 30 minutes back in a very busy workday, I
Yeah.
think I
Yeah.
would.
I'm kind of with you on that.
Yeah.
I'm so busy also, I might do that.
Yeah. You know, a compromise position might be spending 5 minutes on just having open, okay, what would you like to talk about more for us to put
For
on
future.
another agenda?
Yeah.
So we've got that,
Sure.
the nuisance species, anything else, guys, that
Gonna put it in my notes.
is important to you? Commissioner Lilly.
Yes, thank you. Just I think on the future agenda items, we should circle back on the conversation about community agreements.
Mhm.
Oh,
I think
yes.
we,
That's all, yep.
we established, something and we said we'd hold off and I think it's time to revisit that and see if we're okay to move forward with that.
Thank you for bringing that up. That has been on the radar, and I really appreciate you bringing that back to the top.
May I? Yeah, I do as well, Commissioner Lilly, thank you. And since we hope soon to be bringing 2 new commissioners on, having it in place for them to
Yes,
start with
We
would
talked about
be
that too.
ideal. Clear guidelines, direction for them.
Great time.
Excellent. Anything else, folks?
I have a couple things.
You wanna listen?
Yeah, that we should add to the to our agenda list. And there are larger items that I think we should perhaps discuss as a commission and then give as a, here's what we suggest we do. It would have a high impact in terms of approaching the goals that we have, canopy cover. One of which is encouraging the city to get rid of every power line within their city limits. And I say this because power lines have been very much on the topic with the Harborton development potential project, but also with the wildfires down in Los Angeles. We are slowly but surely becoming a hotter and drier place with a likely potential of something like that increasing. And I think that the issue of having power lines above our streets, nothing happens downtown. We don't have power lines overhead downtown. We can look outside, we see a bunch of gigantic trees. Half of those are street trees. So I think if we as a advisory body advise urban forestry to take a very intense position, that we could encourage that those get taken away quicker and we can have larger form trees that are not pruned down, and we wouldn't have any large limitations in terms of what species can be planted as we do today. Right now, half of our trees at the minimum, half the lists are all underneath power lines, potential trees. That's a huge, huge hobbling effect on our overall canopy.
And just to clarify, when you say getting rid of, I know you mean burying.
I do, yes.
We would still have them, they just would not be overhead.
No power.
No power.
Yeah.
I did not mince my
But you
words.
still need electric.
Yeah.
Correct, yeah. Transitioning and getting everything to go underground. I've been told that the UK has done this entirely, and that's an entire country. That's bigger than the city of Portland. So I have a feeling that it can be done. What would the cost be?
New York City,
New York City,
St. Louis,
there you go.
I'm sure the list goes on.
Yeah, so I think that would be something that I think we as a commission should be trying to work day to day and work with these things, but I think we should also be aspirational. I think we should shoot for these things and say, here are some big limitations that we can work with. Street tree planting in the right of way, so what we're doing right now with the street tree bump outs that we just got an award for, so congratulations also. Is that kind of big thinking that I think we should be also having some amount of our work be focused on, so that we can really, I don't know, be innovative again in a time where innovation is getting just shoved completely down.
Nice. Okay, well, we spent the 5 minutes that we said we would spend.
But
we
is
want
there
to-
anyone else who has any that we didn't get to hear from? Any future topics? One that's on my mind is, we talked about this, I think there was interest, but just figuring out when we can take a field trip and see some great examples of density and trees, because the urbanist in me always wants to say, yes, we need density, but we wanna make beautiful, safe, healthy places and space for nature, and so what does that look like? So I'm hoping we can continue to try to figure out a time for that.
Yeah, for sure. I know. Thank you for, yes.
Yes. Great, and I want to invite everyone to, at any time that you have a thought, that you think is important on this, to email Brian, Leah, and myself, and we'll be sure to talk about it in our planning meetings and try to work it into an agenda.
And bug us, because we are busy, but we really do, this is really important to get all of your voices into the mix, so please continue to bug us. I know, Casey, you've been bringing this one up for a while, so thank you for being persistent.
Sure, yeah.
Okay, meeting adjourned. Thanks everyone for their help and work.
Thank you. Take care.
Everyone.